At 39, Raven-Symoné isn't going online to promote a new album, nor is she posting breakfast photos to show off a healthy lifestyle. Instead, she dropped an emotional bomb on the internet. And no, this isn't the usual cut your hair, change your color breakup with your partner kind of drama. We're talking about the death of Malcolm-Jamal Warner. No announced cause, no publicized memorial service, just an eerie, spine-chilling silence. Then Raven, with a trembling yet deliberate voice, shattered that silence. She didn't tell the story in the familiar artist leaves behind a legacy tone. She told it in a way that could make your childhood self cry.
And sadness and surprise that I feel with the
But why is the entire entertainment industry avoiding this? What are they afraid of? And in the end, is this death a random tragedy? Or a secret someone wants buried forever? The man behind the spotlight. If you think Malcolm-Jamal Warner was just Theo Huxtable, the funny guy from the Cosby Show, then sorry, you've only seen the tip of the iceberg. When Raven-Symoné spoke about Malcolm, she didn't call him a TV star or America's childhood icon, but a lighthouse. A lighthouse that could talk hug-crack jokes at the right time and, most importantly, always see you even when the whole world looked away. When Raven was only 3 years old, she was brought onto a film set, a place where everything sparkled under the lights but felt cold as ice behind the camera. At that time, Malcolm was 19, with 5 years of primetime television experience and plenty of pressure from being a teenage idol. He could have chosen to ignore her to keep a professional distance, but he didn't. Malcolm walked over, bent down, and smiled as if to say, "Don't worry, I'm here." From that moment, Raven knew she had found a big brother in the chaos of Hollywood. Off-screen, Malcolm was nothing like the quick-talking Theo. He was quiet, but when he spoke, every word carried weight. He had a knack for showing up when you needed him and disappearing when you wanted peace. A skill Raven said only people who truly understand others can master. In her memory, Malcolm was the kind of person who would hold an umbrella for you in the rain, but walk away drenched without anyone noticing. Fans knew Malcolm through 8 seasons of The Cosby Show, 1 Grammy Award, dozens of acting roles and directing projects. But Raven remembered him for the small things, the way he handed her a snack during breaks, the reassuring glance when the director yelled, or how he'd deliberately stand beside her to shield her from a nosy reporter. She called it the art of silent protection. What made Raven both grateful and regretful was his almost unconditional gentleness. Gentleness so deep, it was dangerous. He was too good, too quiet, to the point where we forgot he needed care too, Raven whispered in the recording, and that became the perfect mask. When you're always the strong one who will ask if you're okay. Malcolm had a steady but quiet career. After The Cosby Show, he didn't chase scandals, didn't sell himself out to keep his fame. He wrote poetry, played jazz, directed indie projects, raised his daughter, and lived what seemed to be a peaceful life. But as Raven said, behind those beaming photos was a man carrying the weight of the world. And no one asked if he was tired. Raven recalled trying to reach out a few times when he was silent for too long. Once it was just a text, "Hi, are you okay?" And Malcolm replied politely but briefly, and the conversation ended there. Life got in the way, schedules, time zones, and the connection drifted into silence. A silence Raven now realizes has become permanent. For her, memories of Malcolm aren't about award shows or posters plastered across America. They're of him standing just outside the frame, watching over everything, keeping an eye on a 3-year-old girl among dozens of unfamiliar adults. Of hugs that made her feel completely safe. Of the time he lent her his jacket when the studio wind was too cold. Those small acts for Raven mattered more than any scripted line. And yet, people like that, those skilled at reading others, at creating safety, are often invisible when they themselves need help. Because everyone thinks he's fine, he's strong. Raven realized that she and everyone else made the same mistake, trusting his calm without asking what lay behind it. In the public eye, Malcolm was a symbol of stability. In Raven's eyes, he was her big brother. But now, looking back, she sees a man who had learned to smile to hide the storm inside. And that's why when he left, Raven's pain wasn't just loss, but a blow to the false sense of security she had believed in for so many years. Because when the person who once saw you, who protected you, disappears without a warning, the question is no longer why did he leave, but what did we miss right in front of us? The dark side of the spotlight. Hollywood has long known how to sell dreams, but it's even better at hiding the nightmare inside them. The media loves to paint images of child stars growing up happy, as if on-screen success equals a perfect childhood. The truth is far from it. Many children leave the set carrying psychological scars far deeper than any paycheck could cover. Malcolm-Jamal Warner knew this all too well from the age of 14 when America called him the nation's son, Theo Huxtable, a role that made millions laugh, but also forced him to always be charming, always smart, and above all, always safe in the public eye. To audiences, Malcolm was the embodiment of calm and likability. But behind the camera, a packed filming schedule, producer pressure, and sky-high public expectations forced the teenager to grow up faster than anyone should have to. No one paid extra for the hours he had to smile when exhausted, or for the times he had to swallow what he wanted to say just to keep his image intact. Raven-Symoné entered the business even earlier when most children her age were still learning to spell their names. From her first days on the Cosby Show set, she realized the stage lights were not as warm as they seemed. They were blinding, burning, and sometimes made you want to squint just to avoid the scrutiny. Behind the scenes came the whispers, the judgmental glances, even accidental touches on a child's body, as if it were normal. At the time, child star protection laws were paper thin, and any child without a protective adult could easily become easy prey for powerful hands. By then, already famous, Malcolm became an invisible shield for Raven. He blocked a reporter when he saw them trying to pry personal information from her, pulled her away from adult conversations that had turned inappropriate, slipped her a snack, and whispered, "Not your business." In an environment where everyone wanted to polish you into the most marketable version, Malcolm was one of the rare few who didn't want to change her at all. But always standing on the front lines for others left Malcolm more isolated with his own pain. He became the default pillar, and no one thought to ask if that pillar was cracking. After The Cosby Show, Raven climbed higher on the ladder of fame, building a Disney empire, hosting her own talk show, signing million-dollar deals. Malcolm, on the other hand, took a quieter path, directing, writing poetry, playing jazz, and focusing on family. The public looked and thought he's balancing life really well. But Raven knew it was a dangerous kind of quiet, the kind that comes when an artist retreats from the spotlight because he no longer wants to stand in it. Ironically, Malcolm had perfected the art of hiding emotions so well, no one suspected a thing. His social media was filled with inspirational quotes. In interviews, he smiled softly, answered calmly, and gave the impression that everything was fine. He mentored young actors, joined community projects, all painting a picture of a man thriving. But the keen-eyed and Raven, who should have been among them, could see the slight droop in his gaze whenever someone said, "You haven't changed a bit." The loneliness of someone in show business is unlike ordinary loneliness. It's like standing on stage lights, blinding your face, the audience applauding loudly, and knowing they're not clapping for the real you, but for the role they love. Malcolm captured this feeling in a 2021 poem, "I Play the Role of Peace." Inside, I scream silent truths. Only after his death did people reread it and realize it was a carefully disguised cry for help. But the dark side here isn't just in the scandals and controversies Hollywood is sometimes forced to admit. It lies in the false peace, the kind audiences consume like entertainment, while the artist is so drained, they just want to let go. Malcolm lived like a windbreak wall, taking every hit to protect others while cracking inside a little more each day. Raven realized it too late. All those years, she had never truly looked at Malcolm and asked, "Are you okay?" She, like so many others, was blinded by the lights. They were satisfied with the image of a calm, strong, perfect man until that image collapsed, revealing the painful truth. Sometimes the one who stays calm the longest is the one breaking the fastest. Hollywood will keep telling fairy tales about child stars. The public will keep buying tickets, turning on the TV, and sharing those funny moments from the past. But for those who have seen the dark side of the spotlight like Raven, every laugh track, every behind-the-scenes photo will always carry the unanswered question. If we had asked him back then, would things have been different? The signs and the final call. If you've ever thought tragedy always arrives with the sound of sirens, flashing lights, and hurried footsteps, Malcolm's story will shock you. It came like a soft breeze. No noise, no warning. And only when it swept everything away did you realize what you had just lost. Malcolm never called for help. No venting statuses, no cryptic, "I'm fine but I'm not fine" posts to draw attention. He was a master of stability, at least in other people's eyes. But looking back, Raven sees the cracks had been there for a long time. He would disappear for weeks, unreachable. His text replies were so short they were almost meaningless. When they met, he'd smile, nod, then change the subject as if shielding a room full of chaos behind a closed door. A week before Malcolm passed, He was sitting in Raven's kitchen eating cereal like two kids too lazy to wash dishes. She remembers clearly he looked tired. When she asked, "Are you okay?" he smiled. "Yeah, just overworked." But now Raven knows overworked didn't mean work, it meant emotions. And then at 3:17 a.m. her phone rang. On the other end was Malcolm. No small talk, no lead up, just one sentence, "Ray, I'm tired." Raven asked, "Tired of what?" Silence. A sigh, and then the call ended. No text, no call back. At the time, Raven thought he was just having a bad day. Now every time she remembers, she wonders, was that goodbye? A few days after news of Malcolm's death spread, Raven's voicemail showed an unheard message. 9 seconds. Malcolm's voice low, almost a whisper. "Ray, take care of them. You know who I'm talking about." She played it hundreds of times, trying to guess who them was. His family, his daughter, or the people he had protected his whole life. The memory pulled her back years earlier to a reunion photo shoot. Malcolm had whispered, "One day I'll be gone. When that happens, tell them I never stopped loving them." She thought he was joking. But now, every word feels carved in with a blade. People often say the strongest people are the quietest. But they forget to add, sometimes that silence is the loudest scream and we're too busy to hear it. For Raven, that 3:17 a.m. call is a sound she'll carry for the rest of her life, because it wasn't just a goodbye, it was proof that sometimes we only understand the message when it's too late. The diary and the hidden truth. In a world where every secret has a price, Malcolm's diary wasn't just a keepsake, it was like a ticking time bomb waiting for someone to push the button. After the quiet memorial service, a source close to the family revealed that inside Malcolm's home, hidden in a locked cabinet, there was a thick leather-bound notebook, filled with detailed accounts of his thoughts, fears, and personal events. Raven was one of the few allowed to look inside, and when she turned to the first page, what she read wasn't a farewell, it was an accusation. Not the kind about being cheated on a contract or losing a role, but an accusation against an entire system, the pressure to maintain a flawless image, the indifference of colleagues once called family, and the loneliness frozen in time since the Cosby Show ended. One passage read, "They remember Theo, but they don't remember me. I'm not a man in their eyes, I'm just a memory, a joke, a role on repeat. I'm screaming inside, but who hears the scream of someone who's always smiling?" Raven showed the public only one page, and that alone was enough to send the internet into a frenzy. Malcolm listed names of people he had once been close to, not with anger, but with the voice of someone forgotten. "I saw Lisa, she looked right through me. I saw Kesha, she said, oh wow, I forgot you were still around. Last year I messaged Cosby. No reply. But I didn't expect one. I think I became a ghost before I died." That's when the theories mushroomed. Some said this was simply the lament of a once famous artist facing the cruelty of time and the industry. But others, especially those who had worked in showbiz, saw it as a clue to something bigger, an entertainment industry fully aware of who was struggling, but deliberately ignoring it, as long as the public image remained pristine. Then came the second twist. 2 days after the diary page leaked, a sealed court document suddenly surfaced online. It revealed that Malcolm had once attempted to sue a major television network for psychological abuse and child star exploitation, terms powerful enough to shake the entire industry. The case had been quietly settled with a non-disclosure agreement. This raised the question, was Malcolm's silence not entirely his choice, but the result of legal constraints? Here we enter the gray zone between fact and conspiracy theory. If what's in the diary is true, it means a large part of Malcolm's life was controlled to protect a brand and image. But from another angle, it could simply be the private thoughts of a man in despair, a subjective interpretation, not legal proof. Still, the string of strange details can't be ignored. The diary was hidden, known only to people in the house. Its discovery happened close to the time Raven released the final voicemail. And when it went public, the reaction from certain high-profile figures was suspiciously silent. No condolences, no comments, just an absence from the conversation. Then came an unconfirmed rumor that some sections of the diary referenced meetings Malcolm believed were turning points in his career, but also the start of his isolation. Observers noted that after a few projects in the early 2000s, Malcolm all but vanished from mainstream television, shifting to small roles and independent work. Was he frozen out of major opportunities? Whatever the case, the diary has completely changed how the public sees this story. Before, it was a personal tragedy, a talented man gone too soon. Now it carries the scent of a cover-up, and like all good conspiracy theories, it contains just enough truth and fiction to make it impossible to ignore. On one side are those who believe Malcolm was the victim of a system that drained him dry and abandoned him when he no longer had commercial value. On the other are those who caution, remember, this is the account of a person in pain. Feelings are not always objective truth. And Raven. She stands between those two tides. She doesn't confirm nor deny all of it. She only says, I know what I saw, I know what he told me, and if I stay silent, no one else will speak for him. The lingering question is this diary, a serious warning or just a personal emotional release? Is it the final piece to explain Malcolm's death, or simply a door opening to more unanswerable questions? Until there is official evidence, we can be sure of only one thing: this story has moved far beyond the bounds of a tribute. It's become a test of curiosity, of the public's faith in what they see, and of the patience of those waiting for a truth that may never be fully confirmed. The memorial and the confessions. If anyone expected Malcolm-Jamal Warner's memorial to be a warm celebration of life, they were sorely mistaken. The chapel that day was packed, but not with laughter. It was filled with long, suffocating silences. Familiar faces from The Cosby Show, former colleagues, producers who had once made fortunes off the image of the golden boy, they were all there. And yet strangely few dared to look one another in the eye. Raven walked in not in a gala dress, not with elaborate makeup, just a simple black shirt. Her eyes swept across the room, and she knew everyone had heard what she revealed days earlier. They knew about the 3:17 a.m. voicemail. They knew about the diary, and they knew that if she spoke today, there would be no turning back. The service began with never-before-seen footage. Behind the scenes of The Cosby Show, Malcolm's smiled, cracked jokes made the crew laugh. Then the camera caught a moment of him sitting alone in a corner, eyes fixed on nothing, the smile gone, as if it had never existed. Cut. Another clip, Malcolm directing a scene, gently guiding young actors. And then, while everyone focused on the script, he turned his back to the camera and let out a quiet sigh. No words, but everyone in the chapel understood these were the empty spaces no one wanted to see. When it was Raven's turn to speak, she stood up holding a neatly folded piece of paper. She began in a calm voice, I thought I knew Malcolm. I thought I understood him. But it turns out I only knew the part he wanted me to see. Her voice trembled slightly, but her gaze did not waver. The week before he died, we sat eating cereal, talking about childhood. I asked if he was okay. He smiled and said, yeah, just overworked. But now I understand that was his way of saying, I'm breaking. And I didn't hear it. The room fell into silence, broken only by muffled sobs from a few in the back rows. Raven continued now without looking at the paper. I failed him. Those 3 words dropped like shattering glass, making several people bow their heads. Because they knew it wasn't just Raven's fault. It was a collective fault, everyone who had assumed Malcolm was fine, that his silence was peace. Queen Latifah, seated near the front, wiped tears from behind her sunglasses. Lisa Bonet, once a close co-star, had to be escorted out before the service began, and now stood in the hallway, her hands still trembling. Then Raven pulled an envelope from her pocket. This is a letter Malcolm left for his lawyer, to be opened only if he was gone. Her voice caught on the last word. I didn't want to read it, but I think everyone needs to hear it. She opened the envelope, unfolded the paper into thirds, and began to read, I never hated anyone. I only hated feeling invisible. The way the world stopped caring when I no longer made headlines. My friends forgot the kid who stayed late to rehearse with them. I wonder if I did something wrong, if I was ever good enough when the fame faded. I wish I had shouted louder, but I'm tired now. I gave the world my light, but I wish someone had seen my shadow. The room was utterly still. You could hear someone gasp in the back row. Regina King, who had once dated Malcolm, bowed her head, her shoulders shaking. A few people stood abruptly, tears streaming down their faces, murmuring, we failed him. In that moment, the memorial was no longer a place to honor a legacy. It became a mirror held up to the entire industry. A brutal mirror. Because if someone like Malcolm, kind, patient, always giving, could still vanish in silence, how many others were hiding storms beneath a calm mask? Raven folded the letter, set it on the podium, and ended with a sentence that made many cry on the spot. You once told me, they only care when it's too late. And now here we stand, living proof of that. No one clapped. Only a heavy silence remained, the kind that this time everyone could hear. The legacy and the warning. Malcolm-Jamal Warner left behind more than the seasons of The Cosby Show that shaped the childhoods of millions of viewers. He left a diverse artistic legacy, a Grammy Award for Best Spoken Word Album, 2015 dozens of television roles, critically acclaimed independent directing projects, and countless impromptu jazz performances he called therapy for the soul. But in hindsight, the most valuable part of his legacy didn't lie on stage or in the studio, it was in the quiet acts that were never recorded. He was the one who handed his jacket to a young colleague when the set was too cold, the one who sat for hours helping a new actor learn their lines, the one who replied to fan messages with genuine words instead of copy-paste. These were small pieces, but together they painted the portrait of a man who always gave more than he received. And yet Malcolm's story became a harsh warning. Kindness is not always returned, and sometimes the kindest people are the ones carrying the deepest wounds. As Raven said bluntly at the memorial, "We admired his strength so much that we forgot the weight that came with it." Malcolm's death, along with the diary pages and his final letter, sparked a new conversation about mental health in the entertainment industry, especially among artists who grew up as child stars. People began to realize that a smile on the red carpet isn't proof of happiness and silence isn't always peace. On social media, hashtags like #Justice, #4Malcolm, #Protect Child Stars, and #See the Shadow spread rapidly. Not just fans, but high-profile names like Oprah Taraji P. Henson and Donald Glover shared his story publicly along with the message "Check in before it's too late." Netflix quickly announced a retrospective program about Malcolm, but this time what made it a global trend wasn't nostalgia, it was the silence he left behind. However, beneath the tributes and hashtag campaigns, a cold truth remained. Malcolm was no longer here to see these changes. He left believing he had been forgotten, and that's what many found most painful. Malcolm's legacy now isn't just what he created, it's also a bitter lesson for an entire generation. Sometimes we are so busy celebrating the light that we overlook the shadow it casts. And if there's one thing this story teaches us, it's this: don't wait until someone is gone to start listening to them. Raven closed her message with a simple sentence, but it rang in the hearts of listeners like an alarm bell. Don't just look at the light. See what the shadow is telling you. Malcolm-Jamal Warner's story is not just a personal tragedy. It is a mirror reflecting an entire industry where stage lights shine bright enough to hide the cracks and silence is thick enough to swallow cries for help. He gave us laughter music, warm moments on screen, but his greatest legacy is the reminder that even the strongest person needs to be asked, "Are you okay?" If this story has touched something in your heart, don't let it end here. Share this video so more people understand that mental health matters just as much as any award or fame. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever seen the shadow behind a smile? And most importantly, check in on someone you haven't spoken to in a while. Because sometimes one timely question can save a life.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.